let me turn now to our featured modeler, who is Al Collins. Al owns Ultimation. And I'm sure that most of you are familiar with his project, but I'm really pleased that Al is here tonight to talk to us about something that I think is really going to be beneficial. So thank you so much for being here, Al.
I'm unmuted here. Everybody hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When I'm not building Sanders, I actually build a few models. I model in O scale. I like working with wood, and virtually everything I do is scratch built. I do some kit bashing, but it's usually fairly heavy when I modify kits that I have. One of the biggest frustrations I had over the years in modeling was not being able to finish them properly. I had a lot of models that I built. They went together very nicely, but they sat in boxes being unpainted or unweathered or one. I got out of the hobby for a number of years. When I got back in, I decided that one of the challenges was going to be to learn how to finish models properly. I started researching paints and finishes, and I think Clark and maybe even Jim last week mentioned that the military model guys are leaps and bounds ahead of any of the paint finishes that are, you know, on the market for model trains, especially since float wheel vanished. If you spend some time, or I have spent some time studying the war gamer people and the military modelists, AK products, MiG products. Actually, Vallejo, AK, and MiG, I think they all live in the same apartment, or they're all related somehow or interrelated. And they have just a vast storehouse of finishes. So I did a little group that I belong to, and Clark's a member of it too, actually. Are you there, Clark? Maybe he's fallen asleep. Anyway, I've done put together a couple of little seminars on finishing, because I felt that as I learned this, I pass it on as much as I could, going back to the frustrations I had when I couldn't finish models. So the first one I've done, and if I can remember what Ed taught me on Monday, maybe we can do this. So we go to screen share. We open that. Look at this. I might even have it. Wow. There you go. So this is virtually a scratch built project that I've been working on. Everybody happy? Everybody see what I'm doing here?
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yes.
You good? Okay, because computers and me are fairly new. This is a little pump house, and the end product is a water tank. So I'm going to go through the steps of weathering how I did this. This is just scale lumber. Actually, I used to cut scale lumber, and I used to live in a town called Mount Albert, so do the math. And now I sand lumber, so I'm used to making sawdust. So the first thing I like to do, you can make your own stains, and Hunterline's a little bit expensive, but it takes a long time to go through a bottle of Hunterline. It just does the job for me. So the very first step, I don't do anything to the wood. I just soak it for a few minutes in about an 80% dilution with driftwood. This gives you a really good base. There's a little hint, and strangely enough, if you look on the label here, it says wood stain with rubbing alcohol. You'll notice on the newer bottles that Rick and Maureen have not put rubbing alcohol. I don't think they ever used rubbing alcohol. It was just sort of a slip. The problem with rubbing alcohol, if you're using it to dilute any of your stains or your shoe dyes, some rubbing alcohols, because of what it's used for, they have actually baby oil or smelly stuff in them to benefit the person that's being rubbed, and they can leave a little bit of a sheen. So this is just 1x12 O scale basswood with 80% solution of hunter wood dye and it's sitting on the deck on my front porch, reasonably accurate. If you want to darken it up, you can use 100% driftwood. You can use Cordova brown. You can look through the different stains, or you can make your own to suit. Trick is go from light to dark, because you can't go the other way. What else have I written on here? Oh yeah, if you've got the boards already pre-cut, you can vary the stains to accommodate the weathering that you're trying to emulate. So one of the most popular colors you'll see in railways seems to be boxcar red or barn red or barn brown or whatever. And I mean, Floquil used to make a pretty accurate reproduction of that color, but they're not around. So this is about the closest that you can come to. 1-to-1 of those two colors there. And that comes up with the closest thing to boxcar red. I think the interesting side note on that is the reason boxcar red was so popular for buildings as well as rolling stock is they just threw all the paints they left over in a great big bin and stirred it up, and that was kind of the ugly brown color that came out at the end. So now that we've got our stained wood the way you like it, we can dilute the boxcar red or the barn red color 1-to-1 with water and just brush it on. And this is where it's important to vary the intensity, because again, if you get the color over top of the area that you don't want color, then there's nothing you can do. Ask me how I know when I look at the bin of pieces of wood that are too red. Once you've got the color the way you want it, just give it a quick wash of driftwood, put full strength driftwood. That ties the color and the colorless or the weathered portion together. It just sort of blends it so you don't get a real strong demarcation between the colored part and the part where the paint is worn off. If you can see the little black arrow in there, brush it away. The bottom of the boards, if you look at any old barn structure, the bottom's always, it's actually mildew, mold that grows in the bottom of the wood because it has more moisture in it, so it tends to be darker. And that's what it looks like when it's done. It's ready to start putting on the model. Sorry, missed a step. Now to get a little more of the effect of the mold and the moss, which is again prevalent close to the ground on a model, we can use a little white or off-white. Dampen the wood first, just with a little water, just touch some of that white on, and then wash it away very quickly. And it just leaves a little bit of a white tinge without making it too obvious. We let that dry for a bit, let it soak in, let it dry. Now I have tried many ways to distress wood, from using razor saws to files, and most of the time it just turns out to look like you used a razor saw to try and distress wood. If you keep your coatings very, very thin, the natural, you can see it somewhat in these pictures already, the natural grain of the wood will show through. Really the only place that you need to work on distressing the wood is, again, at the bottom part where it's close to the ground, and it rots and chips off. Let me back up for a sec. So you just, an X-Acto knife, you can get a little bit aggressive. You can take sometimes I take a little wire wheel in a Dremel and work upwards away from the bottom of the board to stress it out a little bit. A darker stain at the bottom, and that just accentuates the cracks that you've just put in, the weathering you've just put in with that little X-Acto knife. Just to wash over that, and the end result, you can see that some of the cracks and splits that are in there are brought out. And then I'm a big proponent of blending everything together. so that you don't get any obvious changes. So again, a very, very light wash. And if you look at the, as I said on here, just down at the bottom right corner, you can see how fine a wash that is. It's about 5% paint and 90% water or alcohol if you want. And that just sort of blends the whole thing together. And there's what your boards look like. And you can see the grain without having to work at distressing the wood. There's actually some grain in there because the colorant is not thick enough to fill the natural grain of the wood in. Now we're going to put some nail heads on. Here's where you need to get a very steady hand. Tiny little brush. Very important part of modeling for me is these tiny little brushes and the head of a pin. So the challenge is to make those holes with the head of a pin and then get a little stain, dark stain on the brush and get it in the hole. The bottom line, you can just put a little drop in and wipe it with your finger and it didn't stand out. But I think you can see here how there's grains and structures and everything else in that wood with virtually not a lot of effort put into distressing. Then we put it together. Now this is where subsequently I might do a little more presentation on some of the military materials I found, the military modeling materials I found. These are no different than using the pastel chalks or the the dust and things that are available. I just find these are very, very, very finely ground pigments, and they do an excellent job. So along the bottom, you just want some, splashback from rain coming off the roof. And the disadvantage, as I said here, is that this stuff is pigment, so it's very strong. If you put on too much, that's it. It's not coming off. So you got to be very, very gentle. And there's the finished product for that little shed. So I've got a little bit of an introduction here because I'm going to do, I've got another seminar that I did on rusting, which is the second most common color in railways between boxcar red is rust. And these are some of the military paints that I've been researching. So this is another part of this structure, which is again just done with the boxcar, or sorry, with the driftwood stain and some NBWs. And all these done at this point, the NBWs are just painted like a rust color. Now we've just taken a very small brush and a darker rust color and some odorless thinner. Now I've changed from alcohol because all of the military model paints are mineral based. And you can see now that there's some not so bad rust effects in around the MBWs. And that's just done with a little bit of a darker rust color and just flood it, soak it in with some mineral spirits, which you can get at any art store. So that's the first step of the model I've been working on with some of the various shading and various stains and some of the rust colors and whatnot. A couple of tips that I'll just mention for the folks that want to work with strip wood. When strip wood is cut, there's always two different sides to it, depending on, even more so depending on the grain or where the raw material is cut. There's a smooth side and a rough side. So for what we're doing, if you sort out the smooth side, you can get a lot nicer work. Again, it's easier to distress something smooth and make it look rough than make something rough look smooth. It's just a couple of more shots of some of the pieces of wood that we've done. And again, I emphasize that if you're very careful with keeping the amount of colorant or the amount of stains you put on, you can keep a very realistic looking wood finish without spending a whole lot of time running razor saws over it. Yeah, you don't need to buy You don't need to buy the $7 an ounce thinners from any of these people. You can buy the stuff at any art store. It's my friend's sense of humor because the Mona Lisa's on there. But if you're going to go to Paris and the Louvre to get some, let me know. Come and carry your bags. I mentioned before, use pure alcohol if you're using alcohol in diluting your stains. You don't have to use 99%. You can use a 70%. That just means it's 30% water, but stay away from the rubbing alcohols. Brushes. Our local art store is called Curry's. I went in there one day and I asked the guy in the store, I said, okay, I got my budget here. I want to buy some really good brushes for doing my models. I explained to him what he was doing. He said, just buy the cheap ones. And when they start going like that, throw them out because the good ones will do the same anyway. And the main reason that this happens is that the paint gets down in the furrows where the bristles are much closer together, and it eventually just makes the hairs go out like, I forget what this little guy's called. Ed knows what that guy's called. Anyway, when they get to this stage, they're good for using for glue because you can't bring them to a fine point to do anything decent with. And there's the finished product. That's scratch built. Clark, our friend made those valves and piping for me. I don't think Clark's still here. We have a mutual friend, Clark and I, Tim Warris. Some of you may know. He's Fast Tracks. He actually owns Mount Albert Lumber now, and he just got big time into 3D printing. So
Clark is here.
I am here.
Well, say something then.
Well, I didn't want to. You're doing a fabulous show.
Anyway, so Tim has got big time into 3D printing and casting. He's doing his own printing and casting of things. So I told him I was working on this project and I wanted to get some gate valves and fittings. So he printed all those, all the piping that comes across the top and the big valves and everything else. He printed those all and cast them for me, and that's pretty much the finished product. And there's our little shed down the bottom, our little pump house that we built. And there's the wall that we were looking at. So I think that's, oh, there's another one. So there's that little fuel tank is a sample of some of the rust techniques that I was experimenting with that maybe at a future date I can share with you. But I said before, it's all of this stuff is it's just trial and error. And anything that I've done here, I had before I did it, I'd never done it. So it's redundant to say, but yeah, don't be afraid to try fiddling with weathering because it's you get some great results. So thank you for listening and allowing me to share that. And any questions, I'll be more than happy to say what I can.
Do you know where the prototype for the tank is?
In the figments of my imagination. That's, am I still on here?
Yeah, I took you off with Spotlight.
Yeah, you're good.
All I see is a question mark. I should be, did I end my share?
Yes.
How do I see my smiling? Oh, I guess I can't see my smiling face.
Just in the box.
I can't see. All I got is a question mark in the middle of my screen.
No, the thing is, you have to put the Zoom meeting on top of your other presentation.
Oh, what's that thing in the background there? Is that a module?
Yeah. Okay, hang on for a minute here. Look at that. I'm back, I think. Well, hang on. There, that's my little tiny railway. I don't have a lot of room, so basically I just built a little module, but 15, 16 feet with a dog laying in it. And it's somewhere to put my models instead of putting them on a shelf gathering dust.
Al, quick question for you. Charlie Tusek.
Sure.
Just want to say, a proud owner of one of your products. Thank you very much. You didn't mention anything about sealing and or warpage when you're staining or painting your strip wood. Can you address that? Do you need to seal, and what do you do if you get warpage?
Well, being that it's strip wood, okay, let me back up. No, I don't seal anything because that kind of destroys what you're doing. When I'm working with wood, if plastics and things, yes, but then your final weathering goes on top. Using alcohol as much as possible, you eliminate a lot of the warpage because it dries so quickly. And again, using strip wood, it's getting glued onto a background anyway. So if you were to work with sheet wood, for example, then you have to be very careful, because if you saturate one side of clapboard siding, or, for an example, or board and batten siding, and the other side is dry, it's going to go, it's going to curve on you. So I haven't, to be honest, everything I do is virtually board by board. But from the limited carpenter experience in the past, if you're doing anything, you should always do both sides. Like they tell you, if you're painting trim work, you should put a coat of paint on the back of the trim, because if you seal one side of a piece of wood and you don't seal the other, then one side's going to absorb moisture at a different rate than the other, and it will tend to warp. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Thank you.
I think if you seal anything, then going back to what I was trying to point out about how you can maintain the integrity of wood in your models is by putting a very, very small amount on, so it soaks in. If you attempt to seal it in any way at all on the finished surface, you're going to lose that. Perhaps an idea, and maybe someone else that's done more work with sheet wood can chime in, because maybe if you seal the back before you put something on the front, that might help.
Thank you.
Al, when you talk about putting your strip wood onto something, so you brace the inside of it pretty thoroughly, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know if I can show you that little structure that I made there. That's made out of plywood first, because you can't see inside it. But anything that is there's a framework. I've got a car shed I built here, and there's a complete timber framework first as well. I've got an engine house too that I can't bring over to the camera. Same thing, you build a structure first, and then you put the strip wood on. But really, when you're doing strip wood, you don't get a whole lot of warpage.
Yeah.
And working with alcohol is it dries so quickly, it doesn't get a
Right.
chance.
Well, we have a question over on YouTube. What are your thoughts on brushes? What are your thoughts on brushes over airbrushing?
It's hard. I guess it depends. It's totally dependent on what you're doing. Like if you're, correct me if I'm not answering your question, but if you're going to paint a locomotive, then you definitely airbrush it. And if we're talking about the wood that I've done there's no need to airbrush it. You can swipe some stains on it very quickly. Actually, the wood, when I'm pre-staining it, I just have an old piece of PVC pipe with 2 plugs on the ends. I put it in and shake it for a minute and take it out and put it on a piece of paper towel. So none of the wood models I've ever worked on are airbrushed. They're all just brush painted.
What kind of a brush do you use, or do you even use a brush?
Well, can we go back and show a slide?
No, if you can still share screen.
All right. Look what I'm learning. This is amazing. There.
Especially at your age.
Yeah, I won't say anything. So there's it's all you brushes you need, boy. So that's like that wide brush at the top will cover anything you need to cover when you're washing wood. The one I use the most is that number 4. For all those 1x12s, I just use that and number 4. And keeping in mind that if you're using something that's like a hunter line stain, or even the acrylic paint that's diluted 50% with water, it just goes everywhere very quickly. And the object is not to try and completely hide it anyway. So it's just washes. It's very thin.
Thank you.
Okay, now hang on. Let's watch this. Okay. You watching this, Clark? Stop share.
Al, Greg Cassidy, another Ultimation sander happy customer. I have a question. You were talking about the smooth and rough sides of strip wood. If you have square stock, is it usually one side that's rough and the other 3 sides are smooth? I seem to run into that.
Yeah. And you're going to ask me how I know that.
Oh, I know how you know that, but can you elaborate on the whys?
It's just the if you look at the way, how can I explain this? All right, the way strip wood is cut, it starts off with 2-foot blanks of 1 inch thick basswood, and then that is clamped in a machine that is somewhat like a meat slicer, and then it travels on linear bearings. It travels on linear bearings so that the large piece of wood is firm. So that is the smooth side. And then the piece that's falling away is chattering a little bit because it's not supported. So it's the rough side. And then when it goes into a gang saw, it's not supported at all. So the next piece that comes off the meat slicer has the smooth side that was clamped solid before. And then it's all just, I mean, we're talking microscopic, but you can see it. It's all because the wood is not supported that you get the little bit of chatter in the wood, and you get the little bit of fuzziness in the, so you're right. You will get on a piece of wood that's a chunky piece of wood, a 12x12, you'll get one side that is smooth, and that's the last piece. You got it? Did that make sense?
Yes, it did. I'm blown away sometimes that you guys were able to make HO scale 1x2s and stuff like that. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, me too. And I did it. You know, an HO scale 1x2, we cheated. It's 15 thou. That's the best we could do. Otherwise, they just disintegrated. So it's 15 thou, which is what's 1 inch in HO scale? 11 thou, I think, something like that. Yeah, but you didn't see the scrap bin, so.
Or the sawdust.
The sawdust. Yeah, it seems like I was cutting wood making sawdust for years, and now I'm making sanders making sawdust. I changed my name to Dusty. But anyway, like I just wanted to, Jim sort of touched on this before, the mentoring idea, and I built a lot of models when I was a lot younger, and I'm not rubbing any halos or puffing out my chest. I did a really, really nice job of building the models, and I was afraid to finish them because I didn't know how. And it seemed like all the gurus, the magic painters and finishers, they all kept everything tight. Oh, I can't tell you how to do that. It was a closely guarded secret. So I figured, oh, we'll figure it out ourselves. So I'll pass it on as much as I can.
I think that's wonderful. That's why I was so interested in having you on tonight, because that's exactly, that's the purpose of the show as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
it's good. It's to get people like you and the knowledge that you have, and hopefully pass it on to to the people like me who don't really understand what you just said.
Like I said before, the first time I did this, I'd never done it before, so.
But I
You
think,
know,
but I think you hit on something, Al, that, and I've learned it too from our group that we were down in the south and so forth. You have to try things. You have to take a scrap of wood and just try it. You cannot perfect a technique without some experience and some failure.
Well, so I've been trying to, you know that we have a guy down here that does an excellent job on painting locomotives. And we won't mention any names, but I would like to do something like that. So what I've got is I've got 3 or 4 old Bachmann boilers, and I've got a great big can of paint stripper. I think I've painted them up 4 or 5 times each now. So yeah, I mean, what do you got to lose? Just don't paint your best model. And that was going back to what I said before, that I had all these models that I was really proud of, and I was afraid to finish them because I figured I'd screw them up, mess them up. So no, just try it. What do you got to lose?
absolutely.
I know where you can get basswood.
Well, Al, I appreciate you coming on tonight and talking like this. I really do. Thank you so very much.
No, it's my pleasure.
One thing, Clark, while you're talking to us now, I failed to mention this. The fourth member of the Build Along group, besides Greg Cassidy and Chris and Gaylord and Bob Farquhar, is going to be Clark Cooney. And Clark is going to build one of Downtown Deco's kits. And Clark, I'm still waiting for you to give me the details of when you want to start and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I had a real good discussion today, back and forth on email with Randy, sort of finalizing stuff. So
Great.
I hate putting out something that's not finished and not finalized. And I was hoping to actually have it done last night, but we had a good discussion. And so I think I've got all the information that I should be able to work on it tomorrow and get it to you. And
Oh, that would be great. And then I'll start talking about it and so forth, so that people can get ready for that one too.
Correct. And then what we do have to do is talk about timing, since we have 3 going on already.
Exactly. And I was thinking about not before May sometime, but I'll leave that up to you. I mean, it's your call when you want to do it.
Okay, well, we'll work on that. And as I said, as soon as I kind of get everything together tomorrow and send it to you, then we can work from there.
That's great. Phil Edhart told me, we had a Zoom meeting with Phil the other day, and Phil enlightened me about a lot of things about the program and maybe things that I ought to consider and so forth. And I'd like to run some of them by you tonight and get your feedback on what you think about some of these ideas and see where we go from there. One of the ideas Phil had is that maybe I should have something kind of like not a group discussion, but maybe 2-3 guys talking about the same subject, maybe with different viewpoints on that subject. What would that, and I've never thought about doing something like that, but I guess it would be kind of like a round table or something, that kind of a thing. What's your feel? Would you like something like that?
I think it'd be amazing.
Okay, that's great. Any ideas on subjects? What would you like to have talked about, or what would you like that kind of thing to address?
Well, one of the things we've done with the NMRA when we were doing the NMRA X and the other programs, they had roundtables. They would select 2 or 3 guys that were not compatible as such, but maybe in the same field. So you could have Al and somebody else talking about, and maybe Bob, Farquhar, about buildings. And then you could have, so that subject, the 3 guys you would discuss buildings, and people could ask questions. Maybe the next time you do 3 other guys or 2 other guys, and they're talking about track work. So that could, I think you have to have at least a general topic to start the group off.
Yep.
I've got a suggestion for a general topic, and that'd be on operations. 3 or 4 guys that have 3 or 4 different systems of operating, everything from a card system to somebody else with a switch list system to somebody else who does it completely by computer. I think that'd be a really interesting roundtable discussion.
That's good. I like that one a lot. Yeah.
Jim, another topic that I would find interesting, I think some others might, if you could get a few people together to talk about paints, specifically the differences between what we've traditionally used in painting railroad stuff and how the military modeling paints that are coming in are changing that, and who's used what and how it's worked.
Got it. Can do that.
So it's the scenery, different techniques.
I was just thinking about different kinds of weathering, whether you're using powders or airbrushing, or some there used to be, I want to say Rust-Oleum, but that's a spray paint brand. Rustall or something like that was a liquid tincture type thing. Just, our people have used black in it before, but how do you weather different things? What is not so much technique, because that's like too much, but what do you use and why do you use it to get what effect?
I found the best
materials.
solution to that is to build everything out of sheet steel and then drop it in salt water. Works. Sorry, no, that was a good suggestion. I just had to be a smartass. Sorry.
It's not yet April 1st.
Sorry.
Coming soon.
But then you can lie on the beach and wait for the salt water to work, right?
I like that. I like that a lot.
Okay, I
comment in the
appreciate you.
chat.
I appreciate your comments. I'll try to do some of these and see if we can incorporate some of that in our future shows. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Other thing-
there's a one from YouTube that he says had a suggestion of the NMRA or AP.
The AP program, well, that's easy.
I think
Wonder
the
what-
best thing to do is get the list of topics together and then divide them up on different nights.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wonder what their interest is in the AP. What would they like discussed about the AP?
So we had a Coast Division, actually it was a PCR clinic that was done about 6 months ago by a couple of folks that are very much in the AP program. And what they really talked about was kind of how the AP program, judging program works and how you get judged and why models get different levels of judging. And, the idea of someone submitting a model and getting comments back and going and making changes, making additions to the model, bringing it back to get to the goal of getting the AP achievement points. I wonder, is that kind of what somebody's looking for?
Probably need an understanding of the AP system itself.
Yeah, they haven't answered they haven't answered the question yet. There's also a slight delay with YouTube also.
Okay. Yep.
While we're waiting for that delay.
We
someone
can,
named Steve-
I think both dealing with what the AP is, I think that's a good comment. And also about the judging, I think that's an excellent part of it. That we could do.
Jim,
Both of those.
the guy that you want to get for AP stuff, regardless of what the topic is Jack Hamilton.
Okay.
He's on the board and well, I disagree. I think he's a character and a half. I think he's.
I know Jack very well. I don't disagree with you, but I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, the thing.
Jack's had some health problems recently. I don't know that he'd be available for us to talk with him.
Anyway, that'd be my recommendation. He's the best guy I've heard speak about it without putting me to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the answers from YouTube is the AP seems extremely difficult and would be great to hear more about the how and why to get involved and how to pass judging. Also, people do not have the space they used to have, so how can you pass the AP when you don't have the 8 square feet of space to be able to build a model?
Got it.
I think
Join a club and build it there.
I think we can discuss that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've already mentioned that. I put in the chat for the YouTube how to get onto newtracks.com and all that and register. So they might be, once they're able to do that, maybe they'll be actually on the Zoom meeting.
When you talk about the AP and so forth, I think between Clark and Bill and Martin, we've got MMRs that normally are on the shows anyway. And I think you could do a roundtable with those guys that would answer an awful lot of people's questions. I mean, they've gotten their MMRs at different times in the programs, and maybe from different areas of the country. And I think, you know, rather than just trying to get somebody to come on and talk about the AP, I think hearing from the people that have been through it, I think that might be one thing that we could consider.
Jim,
I-
I don't, Jim, I only spent 10 years teaching my whole region how to do judging. I have the slides sitting here somewhere. I stopped doing it a couple of years ago. And I certainly can handle author, the category of author pretty much if I don't put myself to sleep talking about it.
Well, Martin, this is the other Jim. Based on your experience, I just volunteered you, man. You're the pro in the Mideast region. So thanks.
Oh, okay. Your check's in the mail.
Be careful what you wish for.
I would agree, and frankly, I think Bill would bring a lot to the table, and I think Clark brings a lot to the table.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, they come at it, in my opinion, they come at it from a different perspective, a different time in some cases. When Clark got his, it was a different world for the AP than the current AP climate is. Whether it's good or bad, I'm not judging it. I'm just saying it was a different time.
Jim, I'm regularly told by MMR number 198 that anyone with an MMR number higher than 200 is just not real. Just not a real model railroader.
Well, you know, there's no question in some people's minds that is accurate.
Missed it by 26.
And Clark knows I'm telling the truth there. I mean, this is not a one-off opinion. A lot of people believe this, seriously.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll take it back a little further. I counted the other day. Out of the first 200, there's at least on the NMRA site, I have it hasn't been updated for quite some time now, but as of the last update, there were 145 still alive.
It's remarkable.
Of the first,
back in the day when you had to walk through snow 4 feet deep both ways to get your MMR, you know. It was great.
Without,
it is remarkable though, Jim.
Yeah, without shoes on. Absolutely.
That's right.
I remember some of that time. Anyway,
some of the stuff you're talking about, this is Ted Becker. Some of the stuff you're talking about is probably the reason why I stopped pursuing MMR.
I guarantee you it is, Ted. I guarantee you it's some of the reason it's
because I've seen it. It's been cheapened. That's my expression.
I guarantee you there's a lot of feeling out there like that. I can remember, and some of you may remember this and may not. I can remember the hard discussion in the NMRA about reducing the points for scratch building and putting those points into prototype. And people said, you know, that's going to cheapen it. You know, that's going to make it, you know, people stop scratch building and so forth. And, you know, whether there's merit to which side of the argument, you know, depends a lot on where you are, I guess, in age and how you model. But there was a major arguments going back and forth. My understanding is the start of it came from the West Coast, came from the California area and Oregon and Washington State, and modelers out there.
Guys in my backyard.
Yeah,
and partly a name that was mentioned earlier.
And they pushed it.
I had an experience. I was on a layout tour, 2013 PNR Regional in Boise. And we're in this guy's basement. The guy had a nice layout. And there's a crew of guys, 2 or 3, who were almost desperate, looking over this layout for models that were worthy of AP judging for a merit award. And it was like they were grasping at straws to find enough points to give this guy a certificate in one field or another. And then another instance locally, there's a guy I know, I've operated on his layout. He has about enough electrical knowledge to successfully change the batteries in a flashlight, and he got his electrical certificate. And it's like, if this is the standard that I'm working to, forget it, because I was slowing myself down, not doing things because I wanted to postpone it until I could do it to AP standards so I could get it judged. And I thought, nah, this is holding me back rather than improving my modeling. So I gave up. I still have the notebook. I have one certificate that I'm quite proud of that I've earned. Well, I was almost 3 times over when I got the certificate, and I've probably doubled that again, and that's volunteer.
Yeah, Ted, I think you're right on with electrical. The occurrence of DCC has solved an awful lot of electrical problems that used to challenge us. And now if you read the standards for your AP and electrical, it's like falling off a log. It's really easy to get because DCC solves all these issues. And I have been campaigning at the national level for us to upgrade that and make it more, I don't want to use the word challenging, but make it more reflective of better engineering techniques for electrical.
But
And
so
I have
one
not
thought
succeeded yet.
process that should be worth considering is that electrical in the DC world meant one thing. In the modern world, electrical means a lot different.
Yeah.
Right. Because it not only includes, I mean, if you think by extension, you've got the layout itself and the DCC for the layout.
Yeah.
Then you've got turnout control, but then you can add on to that a CMRI CTC electrical solution, or you can add on animation. So it might be very interesting to think about the electrical envelope being a larger envelope.
Yes, that's true.
That has kind of mandatory options to extend your knowledge base beyond basic DCC wiring and turnout wiring to a larger, larger set of fields doing something in one of these areas.
Yeah, Phil,
I'd
100%
like
with
to
you.
second that thought on adding on to it. I just recently received my electrical AP, and I peppered it with an awful lot of, with a nod to Jeff Bunza, animation, lighting, turnout control using Arduinos, and adding on the new technology. Heck, I built my layout on DC, and all I've been doing is ripping out over the last 20 years and upgrading with the newer electronics that's available. And I mean to tell you, that's challenging, and I've had to learn a lot in the last 20 years just to come up with the current technology. So I think more emphasis on that and the electrical engineering is a very worthwhile thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think you need 2 things. I think you need a base. I know guys who can't follow a circuit, like they just don't get it. You should be able to at least understand a basic circuit with a switch of some type to turn on and off something. And you have to be able to explain it a little bit. And then you can add in the newer stuff. But I think you have to have a little bit of historical electronics or electricity to make the certificate worthy.
No, I agree.
There's a bit of, as Jim said to me, about the guys under 200 or 225, I hope.
Good night, fellas.
We did have to know some of the basic stuff, but then the option was you could go outside of that. So I think there has to be a balance in there somewhere, Bill, that you have sort of basic electrical theory and then go from there.
Yeah. Part of
But
the
you know,
problem is
I'll give you
so
an
where
a lot of
example.
where would programming a decoder and advanced decoder programming techniques fall? 'Cause
I would think that would be
I
an
mean, it's an
add-on.
interesting thought process to think about all the things we've heard about on this show that everybody says, wow, that's an amazing modeling thing. How do we assure, my question to the MMR program is, how do we assure that those things have a home so people get credit for the things they're doing? Right. So in other
I,
words, if somebody's set up and they've set up JRMRI and they've set up for all of their engines and they've custom matched
Yeah.
sounds and that, does that have recognition value?
I think we have to be very careful in looking at this in that we do not identify proprietary products in the AP process.
Right.
So you got to sort that out. And I think that's been some of the struggle that I know Frank Cook's been challenged with this stuff. I poked at him several times at the NMRA national level, and so far no adjustments. But I'm going to keep working at it. You know,
Right.
you never know.
I think,
But
but I think though, if you're saying, well, I got on JMRI, I downloaded it, and now I'm working it. Well, to me,
I think you define kind of something that says, you know, you've set it up, you've programmed a set of engines, you've gotten custom, you've matched. It's just an interesting question because kind of, I think a lot of what we reflects the way the hobby was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, here's another interesting question. So someone who weathers intensely 200 cars that are all, you know, either shaker cars or out of the box cars, but really weathers them so on an operating layout, they look amazing. Does that have value in the hobby? And by the way, I'm asking questions more than saying something, but it's a really interesting thing. Are we valuing the things that people are doing today versus the way we saw things 30 years ago? I mean, between you and I would never build a brass engine.
no,
To me-
and either would I. Well, I've attempted it, but I agree with you. But so maybe locomotives or motor power isn't your category that you would go into.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is, I think one of the things is that maybe it should be an extension to some of these new things. Maybe it's not electrical. Maybe it is animation and computer automation, animation and systems, where there's a new category. But I mean, I think there's an expansion to the things that people are doing in modeling today, because the things that you used to have to do to build a model, a lot of that you don't have to do anymore. It's
Right.
done by a commercially structured physical underpinning.
Okay, but the program itself, it says achievement program, achievement to your technique and accomplishments, not of what somebody else has done. And I think to be a craftsman, you have to make the car.
Okay, Clark.
Yeah.
Clark. Okay, if I download something off of Thingiverse and print scratch building, someone else designed this thing.
Right.
But if I go in and I draw it into CAD and I do all of that work, hours and hours and hours of work, is that scratch building?
Yes.
Yes.
Some people would say, no, you did it on a computer.
No, that is considered 3D printing. If you look, and
Yes.
Frank Kosh in the AP department is very clear on that. You're using a tool, the computer, to make the part.
Right. If I didn't design the part, it's not scratch built. I might as well bought it. But if I do all that work to design that belt so that it clangs, and then I 3D print it,
then you should get the points because
it was your skill.
You have shown the
skill that produced it.
That's what I think we're getting at. And maybe you got to have some parameters or not. But the guy who does JMRI beyond the basics, he goes in and he customizes it extensively. Or the guy who does the same thing with.
But okay, we have to look at the category. It's electrical. It's not computers. It's electrical.
But that's the point, Clark. That was the point is, based on the way the hobby is evolving, based on the way the hobby is evolving and the involvement of, people who have less interest in scratch building specific models or specific cars or specific engines, but rather are interested in creating a larger railroad environment and taking advantage of commercially available materials. But in that, do a lot of amazing things. Should the program have, so for example, if somebody designs a complete CTC system using CRMI and does that and installs it and it works and it emulates prototypically accurate a specific signaling scheme,
He
should
should
that be,
he should get some points for that, no question, under the electrical.
but see, my point is, by constraining things the way they are in electrical and not saying there is another category. I mean, I think part of my point is that it may be time to think about creating other categories. Like even, I don't know exactly what the right perspective is, but kind of to reflect the fact that, I mean, I especially see the younger people in the hobby, and this is the danger is, you may make it in a way that no one participates. Because if I'm someone who's decided, I'm not going to build a lot of scratch building, I'm rather going to build kits in this, but I'm going to build a very large layout in that. If there's no reasonable way with that modeling scenario to become an MMR, and maybe that's then the definition, that's never going to be an MMR, then those people will never participate in the program.
Well,
and by the way, this
I
is
don't.
why I've told Jim, I've told Jim, I think there needs to be an intermediate level. If there's an MMR with this many certificates, there needs to be a JMR, journeyman model railroader, at half that. So there's kind of a stepped, because I think that's part of the problem is people don't participate because getting one AP certificate isn't perceived as meaning a
Well,
lot.
there's a thing called the golden spike.
Right, but that's you get just
But that
for your
doesn't
initial
count.
layout.
The problem I have with Golden Spike is it does not count towards your MMR.
No, but either with all this stuff that he's talking about, it's not going to count to your MMR and an intermediate program. You got to get into the MMR program.
Well, no, I'm saying is, let's say you have a new category. It's a new AP category called computers and automation, signaling computers and automation. And that's where you get credit in there for if you've done CTC and CMRI and JMRI. If you put in, a controlled system, if you've done an animation product with Arduinos or that kind of, it's those set of things that go into a new category. Anyway,
Yeah. Okay. Let's say we put that in. Okay. And that would, you can either go the old electronics or that new category, say.
Right. You are both.
Or you can do both. But
right.
But in categories, the way it works in the AP, there's 3 groups, and you got to have one of every, or 2
right.
in one and one of everything else. So it ain't going to help you. You can put it in.
I think that's why I was talking about a journeyman. So let's say it takes, I'm just pulling numbers out of a hat. I don't remember. Let's say it takes 14 certificates to make MMR, or 7. If it takes 7, then if you get 3, you're a journeyman. You're not a master yet.
Right. In 3 and 2 categories, for example, something like that. It's something that's an intermediate thing where.
Okay, I can see your point there, where you're saying if you get 2, you're.
Yeah, it's just
2, you're an
intermediate
apprentice.
recognition. It's kind of getting people to the goal. It's why you kind of give those prizes out halfway through. It's motivational prizes.
Yeah, but not everybody should get a participation trophy.
Well, you don't get a participation trophy, and it's not it's a differentiated category, right? You're not a master, you're a journeyman, right? Which says you've mastered some skills, but not all.
That's
right?
like this, like somebody named Grandmaster because you have the all. There is no such thing. That's a load.
No, there isn't, and that's okay. It's fine. But I'm just thinking, I think to get people to participate, I mean, the whole perspective here is, Ted has 1 certificate. He's very proud of it. Let's say he had 2, and he knew if he got a 3rd one, he now would be a journeyman and would be recognized. And that's that thing. And then once you've got 3, you say, well, I'm halfway there. And that it's kind of how you motivate people. And that my real concern is there's 2 major concerns with the MMR program, because I just don't see a lot of participation of people, like especially younger people. One is I'm not sure we're recognizing some of the skills in modeling. For example, if you think about some of those military modelers, and they build these amazing scenes, at the base, it's a plastic kit.
Yep.
And
Yeah, but they're-
so just to think about it, we think of it as being these amazing modelers who are using these amazing techniques we can learn from, but at the base of what they're doing is a plastic commercial model.
Okay, on the opposite, you saw tonight Al's building.
Oh,
I mean,
think there's, and I think, by the way, I think to become an MMR, you have to have the scratch. Guys,
yeah.
and I'm being just a little bit kind of,
I guess I'm on the other side. I'm a bit of a hard ass on it. I think you have to be able to prove that you are capable of doing it. And you say the numbers in the last, Bill, you could probably back me up. I would say in the last 3.5 years, there's been more MMRs than there have been in a long time.
I would agree. Yeah, no question.
There's been just a ton of guys getting their MMRs.
I think there's an interesting point, perhaps, for discussion, that the military model guys that do such outstanding work, most of them are a third our age.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's one of the reasons why they cut down the points on the scratch building and went to prototype, to try and encourage the prototype modelers to get into it.
And having said that, as I mentioned before, I spent a lot of time studying and reading about the guys that are doing the military models. The paint factories in Spain from these guys, it's like General Motors. It's huge, and it's a huge, huge industry. The plastic model industry is 100 times the size of the industry that feeds model railway stuff. Yep. And that's driven by the age.
I think that instead of necessarily weakening some of the stuff that's already there, Phil has a point that maybe we need to look at more categories.
Or completely restructuring it. So you have, more things to interest the people.
Right.
The idea of the master railroader, you're getting more than 50 or 60% of the categories to get the master model railroader.
Yeah. And here's a really monkey wrench, okay? How do you appeal to the guys that never pick up a knife or a brush? Everything they do is on their computer in what's called virtual modeling. But they draw every single line, change every single pixel. Okay, and then they go back and they weather it virtually. They're doing all the same things, they just don't do it physically. Is that worthy of recognition? Well, surely not in any category we've got right now. Okay, it's a totally different way of looking at it. And so yeah, maybe the guy who does 3D or virtual modeling or and doesn't ever touch those other items because he's just not interested. Maybe there's something, that's a whole separate way of looking at it.
And TC taking another side of that. Maybe model railroading is not his hobby. Maybe computers are his hobby. Maybe 3D printing is his hobby. And nothing wrong with that. And if in that hobby he wants to design model railroads, great. But maybe being a model railroader is not the hobby for people that are doing what you're talking about doing, TC.
Well, that may be true. I'm just making an argument.
So I understand.
TC,
I understand you are, TC, but before we go down that road too far, to make the argument that the model railroad community should incorporate other hobbies into it, I think that's.
Well, to me, that's being exclusive and elite. You're saying that if you don't build with your hands, you're not a model railroader.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying.
That's how it sounds to me. I'm sorry, but that's my opinion. If you say to get master model railroader, you have to build all this stuff with your hands. Okay, and the guy's a C5 quad, you just eliminated him, but you haven't changed the fact that he wants to do models. Maybe he doesn't do it the way it was done 30 or 50 years ago, but he's still modeling. And
TC, I guess what I'm saying is, if a person wants to do 100% of everything on his computer.
Oh, I wasn't saying that, because you can't get master model railroader off of one certificate.
Well, but so, you're saying he designs everything. He designs cars.
So in order to get an MMR, that could not be the only thing he did. I'm asking a different question than you're taking.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying, do we have recognition of his skill on that, and he gets a certificate in that, or do we say no? That's not model railroading.
My understanding is the 3D work that he does right now, as long as he designs it, it's counted toward the AP.
I'm throwing another monkey wrench in. What about the guy who I know one guy specifically who has a huge basement layout in Oregon in HO scale. He also has a virtual layout, covers half the freaking country, or half the Northwest anyway.
No, virtual doesn't work for me.
Yeah, but see, to me, it's just as much of a modeling skill. He's taken the model, in this guy's case, SP stuff, and drawing it out one dot at a time and running it down a virtual railroad.
Yeah, but that's like saying that's like saying a guy's a wood carver. He uses a computer and he shows you a picture of a duck and you're going to certify it? No, you got to carve the duck.
No, not what I'm saying. I want to see the design work, just the same as a 3D guy. Okay, just because you got it out of your printer doesn't get you anything with me. I want to see all your design work. I want to see all your files and all the time you put into it. And if you didn't design it yourself, you don't deserve the credit.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point really is you have to show the skill, and yes, computer skills are a skill, but then you have to turn it into a real object. And I don't think virtual railroading does that.
If you're going to put that qualifier on it, then you're correct. If it has to be physical when you get done, then yeah, that wouldn't count. But not everybody who does virtual limits it to the computer screen. When they get through designing it, they make it or print it.
Well, I'm going to say something that a lot of predecessors of mine used to say. I hope you find another association that meets your needs then.
Yep, that's what I think too. I think everybody can kind of agree with you on that. Maybe I'm crazy, but I would totally agree with that statement. Model railroading may just not be your hobby.
Let me give you guys a hypothetical and see how you deal with it. I've got a town off in a corner, and I want some interesting things in the town. And one of the ways to deal with part of the scenery in that town is to put a mirror and to have it reflected, pay attention to the backside of buildings. It's something we all know. Suppose that I tell you I can do that one better. I'm going to put a 30-inch screen behind that, and I'm going to create the town at that corner. What does that constitute in modeling? I created a scene, a scenery, buildings. I created all kinds of lighting.
I would consider it part of your backdrop.
Part of your scenery. It's part of your
part
scenery.
of the town.
Yeah.
It's a 3D view of the town that blends into the town the same way a road or an underpass would blend into the town.
I think it'd be great scenery.
But I think it's one element of the whole scene.
But there's no accounting for that in the AP.
It's part of scenery.
No,
No, it's not.
it's not.
In fact, it's a disqualification.
And what
What
I'm
is-
trying to suggest is that
If you
there
use a-
ought to be many more options for each of the groups so that you don't specify the method of the build, which
Wait
some
a
of
minute.
these options imply.
Now, I agree with you. I agree with you there, Jeff. There should be a little bit more options. But you're going to have to also look at the point distribution on those options.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
But wait a minute. Where in the AP does it say that what Jeff is talking about isn't part of scenery?
Well, I don't know about the specific written rules, but
I don't see
basically, I was told that it doesn't count because it's electronics and not scenery.
No, I don't know I don't know who told you that.
No, the AP chairman in the Pacific Northwest region.
Well, I don't know about him. I know of no rule like that. Have you heard, anybody else heard of a rule like that?
I'm looking at it right now and it doesn't say anything.
I've never heard of such a thing.
I haven't either.
I'm
And-
not arguing.
and-
I'm just saying.
But let me say this, that part of what complaints are about the achievement program is that depending on who you are as the AP chairman, you may have a whole different view of what the AP is about. And part of the problem is that the national AP chairman doesn't select any other person to be involved in the AP. The regional AP chairman has nothing whatsoever to do with the national program. He's not appointed by the national director. Now, I once had a national AP chairman call me up and say, Jim, I need some advice because I'm going to be named the national AP chairman. And what I want to do is I want to go out and tell the region and division AP chairman that I want to do this and this and this. And I said, lots of luck, because they don't work for you. You can tell them anything you want to, but they don't work for you. You don't have any control over their appointment. You can't fire them. If they tell you they're not going to do it your way, you can't do anything about it. Do you know who the regional AP chairman works for? The region president.
Yeah.
That's not what our region states, however.
It may not be what your region states, but that is the federal national program. The regional AP chairman in MER works for the MER president. The president appoints him, selects him and appoints him. The national AP chairman has nothing to do with it.
Actually, we asked for concurrence from national when we
That
appointed.
whoopee-doo, you think national's not going to confer? If
Well,
the president wants him, I mean, it's going to be the president's person.
Okay.
It's kind of like
Lone Star region, if I remember correctly, actually has a thing that says the region only nominates the AP
Right.
chair. And
it may, guys.
I'm just saying. This proves your point. Proves your point. It's different from one region to another. It's different.
No, from a national perspective, what I'm telling you is what the national situation is. The region AP chairman works for, is appointed by the region president of every region. Within a region, that AP chairman and the president of that region may look at some of the AP in a different way than other regions.
I think that is slowly coming to an end though, Jim.
I'm not saying it's not coming to an end. I'm saying
I agree.
that what
I agree.
I am saying that if TC has been told something by somebody in the Pacific Northwest region, that may or may not be what the national policy is. But if it's not written in the AP regulations, as far as I'm ever aware, then that's not what the policy is.
But that's one of the things in scenery. That's why, because it's so subjective, it has to also go to Frank for approval.
Yes, it does.
I'm not saying it doesn't, but what I'm saying is what I've heard.
Yeah. But there is a check. There is a check to what you're saying. If the region guy says no, you can still carry on and have the
Frank
national guy.
make the decision. No question about it. It can always be appealed to national. I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that what I just heard about having the TV or whatever the mechanism was as part of your scene, as part of your scenery, if I come in and I'm judging your scenery, then I know of nothing that says that that's not included in the judging.
No, I put it in the chat what the rule is for backdrop.
Yeah, I can't read the tiny print, but yeah.
So, you know, I as far as I'm concerned, you know, we can add stuff to the AP and so forth. But I think there is so much misinformation about the AP out there and what is allowed and what isn't allowed. I think, you know, a discussion about the AP, I think that's great. I'm all for it. I think more people ought to be involved in the AP. I'm a firm believer of it.
Well,
but I'm not willing to write off that the achievement program won't allow a lot of the things that we're talking about here tonight within various categories as they exist today.
Well, there is one thing that was discussed that I've checked on and asked the question repeatedly the last 3 years, and I've gotten different answers. And it was talked about before, and that is if I go through and design a boxcar for 3D printing and all the pieces that go with it, does that count as a model that I created?
Yeah.
And the answer that came back consistently, which troubles me greatly, is it does if you're the one who operates the 3D printer.
No, that has
But if
nothing
you
to do with it.
hold it. If you send it to Shapeways for printing, they won't count it.
No,
And
that's not mine.
that I pushed all the way up to the national guy years ago. We did it in our region, and the answer came back that way, which I think is nuts.
I never heard that before in my life. Because the reason is it makes no difference whether you press the button or not.
At the national convention, I tried to talk to people from different regions, and I got different answers.
I totally agree with that. That's what I was trying to say a few minutes ago. Because the national really isn't involved in the region making those decisions. They can be appealed to national, like you obviously have. And I don't. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think if you ask Frank the question you just posed, I think Frank is going to tell you if you designed it, if the design is yours, and you have a file ready to send me and I print it for you, that item is scratch built for you.
I happen to agree with that, but that's not the answer that I got back.
That's not the answer you get from some people.
Hold on. I actually ran this by Frank in my region when I was running the contest room. Oh, maybe 7 years ago.
Yep.
A joint conversation between him, myself, and our regional AP coordinator. And the conclusion was, if you designed it, you did the software end of it. It's scratch building, period. And I actually published that conversation in our regional newsletter. And since then, Frank has also come out and said that was in the national magazine. About 2 years ago.
Okay.
As far as I know, as far back as 3D printing was talked about in the NMRA, that has been the position on the achievement program. if you designed it, you don't necessarily have to own the printer that prints the design for you. As long as you did all the computer work, all the design work for the product.
You did the creativity.
You did the creativity
Right.
because it's viewed as a tool, and you
Here
use.
is Frank's answer to the exact question. Use a laser cutter, 3D printer, CNC mill to make some original parts. Are they considered scratch built? Answer. All three devices are considered tools. If you generate the specific file that was used to make the parts, they are considered scratch built. You do not have to operate the machine as long as only your code is used to make the parts. If somebody else modified the code so it will work, it does not qualify.
Yeah.
And therefore, whether it's Shapeways, whether it's me, whether it's Clark, it makes no difference who prints it for you, as long as you send the file and all they do is print it.
Actually, it does. Because
Why?
if Shapeways takes it and modifies it for a different material.
Oh, well, that's different. If they modify.
Except that the original creativity was exactly the same.
If
What
it's
they did was reformatted it for a machine.
Well, then that's not modifying it.
No, that is modifying.
Well, okay,
It
but
depends who you ask.
I think we may be, I'm not sure what Frank would say. I can't speak for Frank on that because I've never asked him that specific question. But if all Shapeways is doing is taking your creativity and making it work in this machine rather than the way you had it done in this machine, if all they've done and hasn't changed a thing from your creativity.
Well, see, that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You're missing a point. And the point is you can go and do the design on a 3D CAD system. But in order to get it to print, there's another step in between. And some people are interpreting that step, obviously, as you didn't do it. And once you hit that step, it's no longer scratch built. Even though all the creativity to do the original CAD drawings was yours. And that's a problem. I have to leave for dinner, but I wanted to make one comment about military modeling. Military modeling doesn't give a rip about materials. They're interested in the end product.
Right.
That is not model railroading's point of view. They are interested in the end product. In effect, they are super kit bashers.
Yeah.
And they'll take any materials from anywhere to finish the thing. That, again, is not model railroading's point of view relative to the AP.
Yep.
So that's my last comment, and I got to say goodnight.
Okay, but
Hi, Jeff.
I appreciate your last comment, but when you come back to the next show, I'd like to carry that on because I don't understand your point of view. I disagree with that. I think model railroaders will use any material they can find.
The more I do kit bashing, the less valuable it is to the AP score. If I take more parts that are already put together, and what I'm doing is refinishing them or cobbling them together in a different way, it's less valuable in the AP score. Go the AP scoring.
No, that's how it works.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
That's
what?
the tradition of the AP system.
What is?
That's the thing, Jim.
The idea of being more scratch built than kit bash.
Okay.
Well,
And
wait a minute, guys. Scratch built, I understand. If you take a block of wood and you make the part out of it, I understand that. If I take a part over here that is 90% of the part that I need and modify it a little bit, I understand you're not going to get as many scratch built points for that as if it was an actual scratch built part.
And that, Jim, is what you're missing when you get done with the 3D part. Whether you're making a 3D CAD drawing or whatever, you're designing your part, regardless of how you get there. That is scratch built. But a lot of people in the AP judging are saying that if you aren't the one operating the slicer, the part that takes the CAD drawing and turns it into 3D G code, then you didn't scratch build the part because somebody else did that part. And so it's the same as kit bashing.
I've never heard this said before.
Well,
The whole premise to it is that once you get the part designed, you sometimes have to modify it due to the shrinkage of the material used to print it. And if you don't do that, then it's no longer a fully scratch built part.
right.
That's a bit of a stretch.
And
yeah.
consequently, you get points taken away.
Yeah.
I can, okay, because that's part of the creativity that's necessary to build a total scratch built part. And if a
No,
person-
no, you're
no.
missing the point. That's exactly the way the military modelers go about it. It's the end product. The end product has the creativity in the expression. How you got there is not most of the issue. That's the point.
to
And that's
me,
the difference in military modeling.
that to me,
So what you're, hold it, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. So what you're saying is the AP should look at the boxcar. And if the boxcar is well built, well painted, actually operates, then that's what it should, that is the judging, period. How it was made, what material, or whether the material was scratch built or not, should not be considered.
Should be a lesser issue.
That's why there's less scratch building points than construction points.
But when you go and watch the judging, the actual judging, you'll come away with a slightly different conclusion.
yeah,
I totally understand what you're saying. Judging, I totally understand that. And I come back to Martin and his clinic that he's given in his region about judging. I totally understand the possibility for judging. I really do. All I'm trying to say to you is the way that the matrix is put together, in my opinion, accounts for the level of involvement of scratch building in the modeling versus the construction or versus the other parts of how the total model is judged. And that's all I can say. I mean, if it's not being done correctly, yeah, I understand your point.
Look, if I came up with a lost wax process to build a boxcar, and I came up with a beautiful boxcar, and somebody else built it out of basswood, I'd be willing to bet you dollars to donuts that the basswood model is going to win.
because
I disagree on that one.
well, that's been my experience. The more
Now-
scratch, they give more weight to scratch building. Everything else they
You
demote.
can't give more weight. There is only so many points for scratch building. After
only
that,
15
it's
points.
huh?
It's only 15 out of 125 points.
That's right.
Right, but they'll give points for scratch building, and even if you did a whole bunch of other stuff, oh, that doesn't count. That doesn't count. That doesn't count. So they won't give you any points for it.
Well,
I don't know what,
How the matrix is
but
made. If you don't have
hold
the judge trained to recognize the quality or the not quality in the construction part, because they're not giving out the points. I'm not saying every judge. I'm saying in general, my experience has been, if you make a paper model that is like, take a magnifying glass and you can't tell, but it's not board by board. Oh, well, that doesn't count because you did use your printer. So no scratch building.
there is some bias. There's no question, especially with some judges. But the point matrix really adjusts for that. And if guys are going way off the top like that, I'd like to know who the hell the AP person is, and he should get his attitude adjusted.
Well,
I
that
think the
that
AP
whoever's
person I'm talking about is dead, because I was in P&R back in 2000. early 2000s. So that guy is no longer in office, but neither here nor there.
His
Now, here's
initials
a question
his
for you.
initials weren't DW, were they?
I don't remember.
Or sorry, D.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question for you. What about if you completely design a part and then you bring it to a machine shop to have it made? Would that still be considered whatever we're talking about here?
Yeah, that starts getting in the tool bit, and that's a gray area.
No, I would say you're leaving the tool because you've designed it, but another craftsman is making it.
Right. And so, and this is the same argument that goes into what Jeff was talking about with that middle step, what's called a slicer, the stuff that converts your CAD program into G code so that the laser printer or the 3D printer or the CNC machine can make it.
Right. And
I've never heard of this problem until tonight. No one is. I have never heard of the G code problem.
Well, it's not just G code. It's the fact that somebody else is operating that part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, but if it's not part of if it's not part of the design process, it's part of the print process, and the print process doesn't make any difference.
Then
Just
what's the
because
difference?
just because you send it to a guy in French and he's got to convert it to English doesn't really change the model.
That's what I'm saying, and you know, I don't know what G code is. You know, I'm just not.
It's computer instructions for a manufacturing process connected to a computer, and let's leave it at that. To get any more involved,
that is not the creative part of anything, then, because that is simply pressing that you take your design program that you created, and you press a button, and it converts it from French to English. And now the English program can print it out, and it prints it out. That is a scratch-built product.
So what's the difference between that and taking that same design and handing it to a machine shop to build?
Because the machine shop builds it.
Well, the printer prints it. So what's the difference? The final part was created by the machinist, not by the person that drew it. The machinist is taking your diagram and implementing it.
And he uses his skill to produce it.
And you have those skills embedded in the printer printing the part. What's the difference?
Non-human.
That makes no sense.
It's a machine. It's a machine.
It makes no sense.
No, there's more.
It makes all the sense in the world. Because
look, if I design a log, if I design a log with striations on it, and I give it to a printer to print versus a machine shop, who cares?
Well, if you want the machine shop to produce a part for you, then that's not scratch built.
But they're producing it to my specification.
Well, then the machine is the one that is scratch building your part, because there's no room for you. You're not the machine.
You're missing the point. I'm taking exactly the same diagram, exactly the same information, and one I'm giving it to a printer, and the other one I'm giving it to a machine shop. What's the difference?
The machine shop human being has to use his creativity, his skill, because no two machine shops are going to do the same exact quality of job.
That's the point that people are getting at about the slicer. It's not just a translator. Like, let's say the printer will only print stuff that is 0.9 millimeters wide, but your drawing, after it's scaled, comes to 0.8. They have to modify the part or it won't print. And therein lies the argument that no, that other person did the final work, so it doesn't count.
All right, so let me come back and say this. Why didn't you change the part dimensions
My
yourself?
part is exactly to scale. I drew 1-to-1, 12 inch to the foot. Here's the drawing.
It won't print.
I don't know that. I don't know the printer.
Well, the Shapeways will call you up and say, we can't print your part. Now, what are you gonna do?
At that point, I have a decision to make, but Shapeways doesn't always call you.
No, wait a minute, TC, don't change the subject on me.
No, what-
You do the design. You send it, to me, and you send it to me. And I call you up and say, TC, your design won't be print. I can't print it because of this and this and this. Now you have two options. You can say, well, Jim, fix it so that you can print it. At that point, it is no longer your design because I'm making it mine. The other option you have is, Jim, send it back to me. I'll make all the corrections on it and I will send you a new thing to print. The new thing, hold it, TC, the new thing you send me that I print, that is your scratch built item. If you don't change it yourself and you say, Jim, make the changes for me, then I am the one that is partially designing your product. And that is no longer.
I'm not arguing with you. I understand that. I'm telling you that not all the people who have these service houses will call you back and say the part doesn't print because it's not wide enough. They'll either print it and let it fail, or they'll modify it themselves. And the judge has no way of knowing which is the case.
TC, all I can
say, that's their argument. That's the argument they're making. The answer to Jeff is that's the argument they're making, is that you didn't press the button, you didn't do the print, so you didn't take your knife to the block of wood.
Well, that's not the policy of the National AP program, TC.
I didn't argue that either. I'm just saying that's the reason Jeff's not getting a consistent answer.
Well, I'm not sure that's the reason at all.
You're also dealing with judges, and the judge can have a bias
Tell me about
and
that.
all kinds of other things.
I think there's not enough enforcement from the top down, and there's not enough training. You just grab, oh, I need another judge, come here. And I don't know that that actually works, because you don't know if that guy's actually qualified, regardless of what his reputation might be.
TC, I agree with everything you're saying. I totally agree with everything you're saying. Yeah, there needs to be some judge training. Yes, there needs to be this. Yeah, there needs to be more control from national, in my opinion, over
I would
the
say
decision.
enforcement instead of control, but okay.
What?
I'd say enforcement rather than control. Control is a nasty word.
Okay, well.
But yes.
Oh, well.
Okay, so I ran a training program for my entire region.
Yeah, but not all regions.
For judges. So, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do with what you can control. I don't have control outside the boundaries of the region. So I instituted a training program. I got it funded. I traveled all over from South Carolina up to North Jersey, out to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, all around the region, giving clinics and seminars and training judges to be on the same level platform. So when it came time to actually go into a contest room, you'd get a pretty uniform result. And I actually tested this once at a regional convention. I didn't have a lot of models. So what I did is I actually had 2 rooms. So I split the models into 2 rooms, and I split the judges in half. And I had them each judge both rooms blind, not knowing the results, swap back into the other 2 rooms, swap judges to different rooms, rejudge everything a second time. And 90% of the scores were within 2 points. And there were 2 or 3 anomalies. And I just looked at them and said, why don't you guys go look at that? Both teams now go look at that and come up with what you really think it is. And one would come back, invariably, one came back and said, we were stupid. Thank you. But it self-corrected. And that's where somebody has to be in charge and sit down and review all the judging before decisions are made. So, we do 45, 50 models. It takes 6 or 7 hours because we're pretty thorough in our region. And then we do it again. I go around the room with all the score sheets with 2 or 3 of the judges, all of us MMRs, and say, really? And so they would all, sometimes they would come back and say, yeah, really. And sometimes they'd say, yeah, no, somebody screwed up. We'll
Yeah.
fix that. So we
Yeah.
actually have a pretty tight program of multiple review to make sure we get it right.
And
You know,
I-
that takes effort though. And
Yeah.
I know other regions aren't doing this.
Well, and I can say that when I was in the Lone Star region, okay, it was very much like you say. And there was 2 teams of judges judging every model, comparing points. And if there was a lot of variation, and you redid it all over again. And everybody was trained in how to be a judge and so forth. I come to Arizona. I'm in the Arizona region, okay? Or I think it's a division, but that's beside the point.
Whatever.
None of that exists.
Well, I can't help you on that because it's, you know, I can only work with what I got.
Yeah, and I know for a fact the P&R, I brought up one instance, but I know when I was in the P&R, I was even secretary, and I know for a fact that there was no adherence to the rules. It was all up to the whim of whoever they pulled in. And, you know, I'm just saying, it's not as consistent as maybe it ought to be.
DC, there's a house down the street for sale. You can move into Martin and Mai's region.
My wife might have something to say about that. What do you mean? Is there a big enough basement?
We have wonderful basements here.
They're picking on me about moving.
Yeah,
we're
we
not
actually,
Florida, we're not California, we're not Arizona. We
Yeah.
have real basements.
yeah, the basement's just as big as the rest of the first floor.
Yeah, they might leak a little sometimes, but
Well, we can't do basements here because they'd be flooded about 11 and a half out of 12 months because the water table's too high. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, to get these things, it takes a lot of work to get all these things.
Right, and you have
Run.
when you first start at it, it's haphazard, and it takes more than one time to get everything figured out and in a row. Once you get the program started, it's almost self-perpetuating as long as you.
Well, I will tell you, 2 years after I stopped running the contest room, things noticeably started to drift.
Yeah, you got to have
And
somebody.
so you have to stay on top of it always.
But it's like anything in a region.
Yeah.
If your volunteers aren't conscientious.
Yeah. Well, it's region, division, national, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
People are people and they will drift, and you have to be aware of it and you have to manage it properly.
Right, exactly.
So and at last year's board meeting, this little tidbit came up at our regional board meeting, and 2 of us on the board at the time said, yeah, we both noticed that, didn't we? We should do something about that. So the judging program was reactivated.
Yep.
So now, but the problem, of course, well, everything's on hold, so everything will probably drift a little bit faster now. Nobody's going anywhere.
That's a whole other
Well,
discussion.
Well, speaking of drifting, gentlemen, do you think it's now time to get off of YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah, now we can start the conversation.
Well, I would have to say thanks for the participation on YouTube. It seems that the chat room there was very I would have to say they were just as pumped of the conversation and all that. So, but now is the time to turn around and thank them for participating, and also to go to newtracksmodeling.com and see about registering and all that, and you can actually be a little bit more live on the participation. And if you're having trouble, let us know on the website, and then we are in the process of having a new one. So If the old website doesn't let you on, just keep on checking it out, and the new one should let you on, and we'll see you then. All right, I am now stopping the live stream.